Hey everybody, welcome to the Podioslave Podcast. We are at episode 81. So if you're checking us out here, we went from Damien Moyal from As Friends Rust to Tupac last week to what do we got going on this week, guys?
We had Tupac on last week? How?
Oh, he is alive.
No, you're right. It's been a fun couple of weeks kind of going all over the map. And this week we had Josh Toomey of the Talk Toomey Podcast, Primer 55 bassist back in the day. He's also on the Knotfest Twitch stream, which all that stuff is in the interview. Go peep that. It'll be here after we talk. Get done talking here. But he's a man of many hats and has talked to some heavy hitters in the industry over the last couple of years, and was early to the podcast game, compared to some of us other ones that have been out here for a couple of years. He's been doing it for about 6. So. And getting the Knotfest relationship has become a bigger and better thing that he was already doing. So it was an awesome conversation with Josh, and man, you guys, we're not going to do a post at the end of it. What do you guys think? It was a good time.
Oh yeah, it was a nerd meet nerd moment. He was in a band, but he's also a podcaster, so we can always relate with that stuff. Kind of insider baseball on what it's like behind the scenes, which is cool because sometimes I feel like we're kind of in our own little capsule. Like no one really knows the struggle, he knows the struggle, but also just different insight on, waiting by the tour bus, all the actual fan stuff. I always thought I was in a bubble in that sense too. Clearly not. There was a few other people, but being in a band and also doing that makes me realize that there's some normalcy to it. So that's always cool. But yeah, man, he was awesome. He's a good guy.
Totally agree. I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a few things he said where I'm like, we're a special breed, for us to do this every week. He does it multiple times a week. He's been doing it since he's been a kid. We've been doing it since we were kids. We're the people outside of the I can't say we. Nate's the person outside of the hotel getting autographs. Yeah. I never took it that far.
I went on a few of those escapades with Nate, but yeah.
But man, you're right. It's like, we joked about Magic the Gathering last week in the intro. It's like, that's a cult. Well, this is a cult too. It's a different kind of cult. It's a different type of nerdery. We were the kids with the posters on the walls from Hip Raider and Circus growing up. And in a lot of ways, we've graduated from that to the same thing, just put frames on it as adults.
Yeah. Right. Pretty much. Yeah. We've classed the joint up a little bit, right?
Still in the basement, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, still in the basement. And talking to our friends and then making new friends over the internet. So, hey, good for everybody.
Yeah, so with all that said, let's get into it with Josh Toomey.
If you like what you hear, please go back and check out some of our other interviews. We've had Frank Turner, singer-songwriter. We've had Brennan Garone of Incendiary, Chad Neptune of Strong Arm and Further Seems Forever, Nick Wheeler of the All-American Rejects, Ryan Sinnott of the Distillers, and Peanut of 311.
All right. What's up, Joshua? How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing?
Good, man. Nice. Last time we were at a Primer show was back in 2001. I'm not sure if you were with the band yet, but it was for the Introduction to Mayhem touring cycle back in 01, and with Reveille, and who else was on that tour? I can't even remember. Dog Fashion Disco?
Dog Fashion Disco, Darwin's Waiting Room was up in Portland, Maine. I think it was it was before you had joined, but that would have been the first time that we could have possibly crossed paths.
Yeah.
Yeah, I joined Primer in 2002, right after the new release album cycle. I was kind of in the camp during the Introduction to Mayhem cycle, because Primer 55 never had like a solid bass player drummer combo. They kind of recycled them pretty quickly. I mean, I always joke that I'm like the 13th bass player. I think technically I was the 3rd. But yeah, when Junior originally left, quit, whatever, I started to go to Louisville. I grew up in Nashville. Primer was based out of Louisville. It's about a 3-hour drive. So I started going up to Louisville to audition, and I was helping them audition drummers. I was bringing drummers with me. And then I've kind of joked about this in the past, but this was during the recording of the new release. And one day I was talking to Jason, rest in peace, Jason, talked to him on the phone, and I'm like, because he was just dragging it out and it might've been a month. I mean, when you're 20, 22, 23, I mean, days seem like years, but I felt like they were just dragging it along. And I really needed an answer to if I was going to be in the band or not. And because I had other things going on, I was already in a band. I just needed to like get some clarity of what was going on. So I was just like, if you can't tell me today, then just take me out of the running, trying to like force the issue. And they kind of like, they're like, well, we can't tell you today. So I guess we'll move on with Kobe. And then Kobe got the gig, and I was listening to a CD sampler came out right when the new release came out called Dude, Where's My Skull? And it had This Life on it. And I was so bummed out when I heard This Life for the first time. I hit play, I had the giant speakers and the stereo system going. And I was just like, man, I totally missed out on this awesome band. And yeah, a few months later, I ended up joining the band anyway. So everything worked out, I guess, in the end. But yeah, man, I was totally, I tried to like stick my stake in the ground, and it did not work for me.
Did they know you from your other band, 12 Volt?
I had my drummer and I in 12 Volt, when our second album or EP came out, there was something going on where we could not tour. And we had seen another band at a show just selling CDs like in the line, going person to person. They had Discmans, this is back in the day, headphones. I check out my band, $5 a CD. And so I was like, why don't we try that? And it was Korn Sick and Twisted tour with Stained back in 2000, 2001, whenever that was. And we went to like Indianapolis and Kansas City and a couple of dates. We just followed the tour, made and sold CDs in the line. And it really got to a point where you didn't even have to play the CD for the person. You just said, hey, you guys want to check out my CD? It's $5. And we were selling enough to basically get a hotel room each night. And so we would get a hotel room, get gas money, get some food, go to the next town. I mean, like I said, I think I was 21 at the time. So, I mean, it was just, everything
whirlwind,
all caution to the wind. But Stained was going to play an off date in Louisville, and Primer was going to open. And I had heard a little bit about Primer. I hadn't heard them yet. And we go to the show, and Stained ended up canceling. So Primer played like a full headline set. And after the show, Bobby and Jason were walking around. And Bobby Burns has this air about him that if you want to go somewhere in life, you would go with that guy, the it factor kind of thing. And I was just like mesmerized by Bobby at the time. And so we met him then and talked to him and hung out after the show a little bit. And then, probably gave him a CD. And then a few months later is when the PRP posted about, Primer 55 looking for bass player or whatever they posted on the old internet there. And Wookibus, who still runs the PRP, had reviewed some 12 Volt stuff and emailed back and forth with him a few times about 12 Volt news and things like that. And so I just emailed him. I'm like, hey, don't tell my band this, but do you have some contact info for Primer? And he's like, yeah. He actually told me not to do it because he's like, you got a good thing going on. Don't ruin what you got or something. But yeah, so I ended up emailing Bobby back then and being like, hey, do you remember meeting me and blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of how, so yes, I had met him briefly but I got the contact through Wookibus at the PRP.
Nice. Let's rewind a little bit. How did you first start playing music? I mean, you play bass. Was that the first thing you played? Were you playing drums before? Were you doing something different?
Funny you said drums. This is real back in the day. When I was around 9, my dad, his cousin was a drummer in like an 80s glam rock band. Like he would show up to the family reunion in the middle of Kentucky with like a half shirt on, like totally looking off the Sunset Strip. And I thought he was the coolest looking dude ever. And we ended up going over to his house one day and he had drums set up in the basement. And so I went down there and I was like, just banging on the drums. And so I left there going, man, I really want to be a drummer. I really want to be a drummer. And I was banging on the, the desk at school and everything at the house. And then sometime after that is when we moved to Nashville, and my dad ended up becoming friends with a Southern rock kind of tribute band that they were called Southern Comfort. I do remember that. And so I go to that rehearsal one night with my dad, and I go to get behind the drum kit because I want to be a drummer, but the drummer was left-handed. So I was just like, well, what do I do now? And the bass player goes, hands me his bass. He's like, try this out. So I just stood there and kind of hit the E string and just that rumble of bass just going through this practice space. And, from then on, I was like, all right, yeah, I'm going to be a bass player. And then that's about the time, I really got into Metallica, really got into Jason Newsted, Cliff Burton, the whole thing, and just spiraled from there. Got a bass, and then, just banged away on it, and luckily got into some local bands, and then moved on to we've gone on to 12 Volt Negative Earth.
Nice.
If that kit wasn't left-handed, you might be a drummer right now.
I know. Wouldn't that be terrible?
There's a whole different world out there, a whole different universe where Josh is a drummer and not a bassist.
Yeah, it's funny, because all around the same time, I mean, we're getting into Metallica, grunge is really hitting. This is, 91, 92, 93, somewhere in there. But I do remember sitting around the lunch table in middle school, and like everybody's like, I'm going to be a guitar player. I'm going to be a guitar player. And even back then, my brain goes, well, these guys are going to need a bass player.
Nice.
So if I'm going to, easy way into the band, I'm going to be the bass player.
Nice.
Josh, hearing you talk about Tennessee, I think the first time I went to Nashville was in 2007. I did a little sidebar trip from Bonnaroo. So I checked out Nashville and the whole scene there and fell in love with it. One of my favorite cities to this day. I love it there. Never went to Louisville, although I want to check that out. But I'm curious, like the music that we hear that's coming out of Tennessee, at least in our age demographic, was like mostly country, right?
Yeah.
But you're from there. Obviously, that wasn't the case. What was the music scene like there? Is it all over the map, or was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely all over the map at the time. We would play shows. I mean, we were kind of a nu metal band. I don't even know if the term nu metal was big at the time, but we would, because we were big into like Fear Factory and Life of Agony and just heavy, but we were also big into, the New Orleans sludge scene and things like that too. So we were just kind of all over the map, influence wise, but we would play shows with rap artists and ska bands and there was a little bit of a kind of whatever you would say was the nu metal of the time. You would have your Deftones clone and your Korn clone and your Cold Chamber clone and your Incubus clone. You kind of had that going on, but at the same time, it was pretty diverse, especially the scene we kind of hung out in. I mean, and a lot of those people have kind of gone on to do some other stuff. I mean, Nathan Ells, who was the singer of a band called Community Spoon, went on to the Human Abstract, and Shauna Potter, who was in a girl band called Fair Verona, is now the singer of War on Women. So I mean, like there was a lot of people kind of came out of that scene. It was definitely all over the map. It's funny you talk about everybody always associated Nashville with country, and the one thing I always said about it, I mean, a lot of those country dudes were either old rockers or were into metal. I mean, when I was in high school, when 12 Volt kind of started coming around, immediately, like I grew up in Hendersonville, which is a suburb of Nashville, which is known for like Johnny Cash lived there and Roy Orbison lived there and Conway Twitty. And, you got all the, I went to school with like Reba McEntire's, nieces and, just all that stuff, man. Taylor Swift went to my high school later on in life, not at the same time, but
Are you an ex-boyfriend? No, I'm just kidding.
No. None of those songs were about me. I did see her at a ice cream shop one day, like early on in her career. She was very nice, very kind. She didn't know what she wanted yet. She told me I could go ahead if I wanted to. So very nice and polite.
Did she sign a CD? No, she doesn't sign the CDs. Never mind. Go on.
Yeah. Stop, Nate. Nate has a theory about Taylor Swift signing all of those CDs. Do you want to? Can we give the theory? Do you mind? That's
go ahead.
I want to see what you think. Go ahead, Nate.
We had a conspiracy theory episode where I think the last like 3 releases, including this newest one, there's like a limited run of signed albums, CDs, and I keep seeing them at my local record store, and they keep like populating, like they keep re-upping. I'm like, there's no way she's signing these. A, she doesn't have the time. B, there's got to be some kind of ego thing where it's like you're too good to sign CDs, especially at face value. The CD is going for like $12.95. It's not like a $75 record. So my conspiracy is that someone signing them for her to make all of her records go diamond.
Well, I mean, it's But if they're all the records are going to go diamond, then I think that might be that may be the reason why she does it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
True.
Good point. Yes. Thank you. Now we can put that to bed.
All right.
Bury
It's been
that
an
one out
ongoing
back.
joke.
Yeah.
It's been an ongoing joke now for like 8 weeks.
If my podcast was going to go diamond, I would sign every single download.
Hell yeah. Exactly. Us too. Us too.
But what I was getting at is late 90s. There was a record store popped up in my little town, and I would go there every day after school and talk to the guy that ran it. And he would always tell me about his band from the 80s, and still friends with him today. He took me to see Kiss in '97 on the reunion tour, which something I never thought I'd ever see is Kiss in the makeup and things like that. But great dude. And I would just go in there every day after school. He's probably only a few years older than me, but back then he could have been a million years older than me. And one day I go in and he goes, Fred Corey from Cinderella was just in here. He built a studio in town. And I'm like, why is Fred Corey from Cinderella in my little town? And I was like, well, I got to meet him if he's got a studio and he wants to record heavy music. And yeah, he had moved there to record country and kind of get it, because that was, the whole glam scene had kind of calmed down, and he's a really great engineer and producer. So he came to town to record. And I met Fred Corey from Cinderella my senior year of high school with the band that ended up becoming 12 Volt Negative Earth. I think we changed our name while talking to Fred, and played him early demos and stuff we had. And he agreed to take us on, and actually never charged us a dime, and recorded some great demos from back in the day. And huge learning experience, just something I didn't take to heart as much as maybe I should have back then, just all the knowledge that he was giving us. Because when you're 17, 18 and it's a whole new music scene kind of coming up, because this is, like I said, 96. So, Korn and Deftones, everything is brand new. And you're like, oh, you're just the old school, this is what's happening now. And, but looking back, probably should have listened a little bit more.
And he was probably younger than you are now back then.
Oh, by far.
It's just crazy. Time is funny like that.
Yeah. We had actually gone through a drummer change at one point, and he floated out there that he wanted to be our drummer. And we were just like, we cannot have the guy from Cinderella in our band. Like, it would be 12 Volt Negative Earth featuring Fred Corey from Cinderella, and you would immediately just get scoffed at. But now you could be Avenged Sevenfold with Mike Portnoy, or any of that stuff. You could be a new metal band with a guy from a hair metal band in your band, and they would be fine. But back then, I feel like it was a little bit more of a stigma around that.
Didn't Dee Snider just do it too? And we were just talking about that the other night, Twan. Just in our production meeting, we we're just like, that's just a thing now. It works in some cases, which is kind of cool.
I was going to say Killing Joke with Dave Grohl, but Dave Grohl's on everything. So there's the.
Well, it's that thing too now where, I know you guys know it too, but for the longest time, being in Primer 55 or being in a new metal band was looked down upon, and now you get, oh my God, you were in Primer 55. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. It's such a bizarre, like, I think I went through what he went through, obviously on a much smaller scale, but just saying like, yeah, I was in Primer 55 when I was trying to be in, bands in the 2010s. You're just like, right.
Well, and now 2021 and new metal's kind of having a resurgence. Right. There are acts out there playing new metal music still to this day, or newer acts that are kind of coming up. And at the same time, like, the older stuff is finally, it's cool to like it again, because I think that happens with everything probably, right? But like, it's definitely, people are taking notice, some of that stuff that came out 20, 25 years ago that is just timeless still.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, you'll see those lists of like, top 10 new metal bands or top 50 new metal bands, and Primer gets, Primer will get added to those lists all the time. And it's, even though technically I wasn't there for the actual recordings of the band, but I was around the camp long enough and toured in the band long enough to, like, I take a lot of pride in that. And kind of fly that flag to this day. I still get tagged in Primer stuff all the time, and I talk to Bobby all the time still, and all that stuff. So it's very cool to kind of see that band getting recognition so many years later, because when we did the show, we did the tour in 2002, and then we kind of took some time off, and then 2007 they put out like a B-sides and rarities album. And I talked to Bobby and I'm like, well, are we touring this? And he's like, well, I guess you were the last bass player. So I guess you're still the bass player.
Squatters' rights.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've always joked, if you look at the Wikipedia, I think I'm like the longest tenured bass player, but we were inactive for like 5 of those years. But we toured in 2007 and we played a lot of like Joe's Bar and Grill. It was very bizarre to pull up to these venues that, there would be like 20 people tops in some of these places, but I don't know if any of you guys have been in bands before, but if you play in front of 20 people and nobody knows your band, it's a weird experience. But it's even weirder when it's 20 fans of the band. So they are having the time of their life. They're reliving Ozfest 2000 in their head. They are singing every word. And so it's a very bizarre moment where you have to play a really good show because these people are here for you, but it's still like an empty crowd. It's a very weird place to be.
I'm curious. So Introduction to Mayhem is like your album of the times. It's a perfect, rap metal, new metal album of the times. And then the new release comes and there's almost like a reggae undertone, which I hear later on, when I listen to it more recently. How is that for those live shows, that dynamic? The first album's a lot heavier, right? So that must be interesting, that whole dynamic.
The set list was always very bizarre to me both times we toured, because I don't know what the thought process was behind the set list, because they just gave it to me. It's not like I was like, oh, I'm actually, guys, I think we should. Yeah, but right. Like on the 2007 tour, we opened with Loose Right Into This Life. I'm like, why are we playing both the hits, right out the gate? And but yeah, it's the set list really never, the dynamic of the set list never really felt odd. I think we didn't play some of the songs that had like horns in them live. We didn't have no horn guys came out, but a song like Texas would still get people going.
Totally. Yeah. I can see that.
Could play, you could, you would see the drunk girl in the front, with her arms in the air, and she's totally into Texas and stuff. So looking back on it, a lot of I always thought I liked Introduction to Mayhem better, but going back and listening now, like songs like, Growing and Pills and, like I said, This Life. And there's a lot on that second record that is really, really good. And I know that I've talked to Bobby about it a few times. I've had Bobby on the podcast, and it's funny being in a band with somebody and then you bring them on your podcast to ask them like questions you really wanted to know. But, he says, yeah, they definitely made a conscious effort to change up on the second record, because even between Introduction to Mayhem and the new release, the new metal was changing, like the times were a changing even back then. And, a couple of years later, you might as well have committed murder if you were in a new metal band. You couldn't have got any gigs at that point. So yeah, it's I think I don't even know how much Bobby was really into the new metal thing. I know he was into rap and he was into metal, but we would be in the van driving down the road and he would put it like he had like a Duran Duran CD that he wore out, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there talking about these obscure new metal bands, and he's like, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's interesting. You're like the third or fourth person that's mentioned something like that, where people in said band have listened to or have played a certain type of music, but then, all right, show's done, I want to listen to Duran Duran, or I want to listen to something completely different just to kind of get out of it. And I know when I get away from my job, I don't want to be doing that anymore. So it makes sense to me, but I never thought of it until we started doing this and talking to people that were, lived it.
Yeah. I don't eat, sleep, breathe new metal all day long. I was, yeah, I was heading down the Snoop Dogg and Tupac thing today, and just kind of revisiting that, and yeah, I get it. You don't listen to what you make all day long, but yeah, I just kind of wonder how much he ever listened to of the time. He obviously phenomenal guitar player, like one of the most, like we did a side band after Primer for a brief moment. And so we actually recorded at his house, and we would just be sitting there and he'd be like, I think I'm going to put a little lead right here. You hit record, and it was awesome. Like every time, I'm like, who is this guy? Like, because a lot of people get like, what is it, like red light syndrome and stuff like that. As soon as you hit record, like, you just forget how to play. But every time he would do it, he'd just be like, I think I'm going to record this song now. Boom, here's the song.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
In the liner notes of the new release, he's credited with every instrument, pretty much.
Yeah, he's
just a savant, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's what I think both albums he should be credited with, both with all guitar and bass. He's definitely a musical genius and just can learn anything, can play anything. I wish he was still playing. I wish he was still touring. I wish, any band that needs a bass player or guitar player should call him up, because it's just a waste of talent that he's not out doing more stuff.
I've always been jealous of those people that could just pick up an instrument and just start playing. Like, oh, I heard that song. Here you go. This is how you do it. Like,
the guitar player in 12 Volt Negative Earth, Cody McCall, he would just piss you off. You would just be like, hey man, you remember hearing that song one time? He's like, oh, you mean this song? And he would just play it note for note. And you're just like, how do you do that? He's still an incredible musician. They the two guys from 12 Volt, Trey and Cody, have a band called Rift, RIFFT. Very cool band that they're still continuing on doing.
Nice.
So you tour with Primer from, when that EP comes out. There's nothing new is recorded, right? It was just all B-sides and whatnot, and you toured off it. Yeah. For like 3 years.
I mean, we toured I think I toured that B-sides album for maybe 6 months, and then it got to a point where, like I said, we were playing in front of nobody. Jason was a mess, and then that's actually when we switched singers at that point, and that's when Donnie, the DRP, came in for a little bit. About that time, I was just, we were making no money, and to where my day job, I was like, I'm making more money in my day job, and I had kids at the time, still do, but I had kids. First time around, I was 23 and no kids, no responsibility. Second time around in Primer, I had kids. I had a wife, and I was like, yeah, this chasing the dream at this point was kind of pointless, because the band had already peaked, and when you're not sending money home and you're getting phone calls from the road and you hear kids crying in the background, and you're like, none of this is worth it.
Yeah.
And the music world's in a different place too at that point in time.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's definitely, the downloading thing was going on. I mean, I remember Bobby always talking about had the downloading thing not really been around by the new release coming out, obviously would have sold way more copies. I don't even know if they could really track it, but he always swore up and down that if they somehow figured out how to see how many downloads were happening around the time. He said they downloaded platinum, I think is what he tried to say, when the new release came out.
It's funny because it's not even just downloading. It's the fact that the CDRs came out around the same time too. So even if you had a friend that had the album, you burned it, that's a lost sale, right? That's a lost sale. Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, I don't know your guys' opinion on Spotify. There you go. The opinion of Spotify or whatever, but I think that, something's better than nothing. Obviously you can see the stats, you can see how many people are playing it. I mean, you got bands like Metallica taking, they'll come to your town and look up and see, okay, in Portland, Maine, these 12 songs are the most popular ones here. We're definitely going to play those live. There's a lot you can take away from Spotify. I know they get a lot of bad rap for a lot of the different things, but I think coming from a downloading world, I think that's at least they're getting something for their music there.
Totally. And I mean, I know in the time frame, the 03 to 06, 7, 8, I broke, coming out of college, first job, not making a ton of money. Yeah, if I could download it, I would. But since then, I've been making up for it and trying to buy everything I can get my hands on that I like. Physical media, vinyl especially. But like, I also have a Spotify account or an Apple Music or one of those that will pay, and I'll stream it that way when I can't get my hands on it or put it in a CD player. So I've been atoning for my sins for years now, but I did it. I mean, it was part of the world back in 03.
I remember the first album we ever downloaded completely from Napster was White Pony. And my friend had a T1 connection. We were like searching track lists and databases and everything else. And we finally got the entire album. A couple tracks probably had like, Z102, or something at the beginning of it. But we finally got it all. And I was like, all right, if I do this, I'm still going to buy the album. I just want it early. And I think that lasted for the White Pony. And after that it was, and then when like torrent sites came out where you could like get an entire discography in one click, I mean, it was over with at that point.
Yeah. I'm shaking my head very quickly right now. Yeah, I did that a lot in college, and I've since tried to buy those things just because I felt bad, because it's all about supporting the artist. Especially nowadays, I'm big into that, and obviously want to make sure that those the right people, you're supporting the right people. So,
oh yeah.
Josh, you were mentioning, tough times on the road, things kind of coming to not an end, but at least in your vision, you were seeing things kind of fizzle out in your career with the band. Was it at this time, were you reading like other journalism in the music world and thinking like, oh, this might be a good pivot for me? Or was it completely random, or how did that come about? Curious.
I mean, that came later. I mean, I've always joked about it. And we kind of go back to the Fred Corey thing with, I would be playing bass, tracking, bass tracks, and in between bass tracks, I'd be like, so tell me about the Moscow Peace Festival,
Nice.
Tell me about touring with Bon Jovi, any of that stuff. Just, and then even as a kid, I had a friend of mine who, we would make it a point to, if our favorite bands came to town, we would find the hotel they were staying at, or find somehow get a backstage pass, or find the tour buses, and just be those kids that sat outside the tour buses for 10 hours or something, And so I was always talking to bands, meeting bands, having questions for bands and things like that. So, and then even, I was joking the other day about going to the grocery store Kroger and just sitting in the magazine aisle back in Metal Edge and Rip and Hit Parader and all those, and Circus, and just sitting in the aisle and just reading, not buying, but reading the magazines and maybe getting one here and there, Metal Maniacs and things like that. So, I mean, I've just been a music fan and like obsessed with, asking questions about why you did this, why you did that, tell me a great tour story about this, tell me something like that. And, so, yeah, I mean, any of this stuff, podcasting and all that kind of came about. I had, in about 2015, I think, I really started looking into like internet radio and just getting an internet radio show. And I still didn't technically have the technology at the time for all that. So I kind of scrapped that idea. And just when I first started listening to podcasts, it was my new job. Where I worked, you couldn't stream radio very well. So, but I could download podcasts before I went to work, go into work, listen while I was at work, and then head out. So I was like, and after listening to that was 2014. About 2015, I was listening to a lot of podcasts. And then after a while, I was just like, I could do this. Like,
totally.
Listening to Josh's show, listening to Eddie Trunk and some of the bigger ones, and just being like, these are just conversations I would have anyway. And so very quickly, I mean, it was like, I think I'm going to start a podcast. I had Talk Toomey or Speak to Me. And so I went Talk Toomey. And then
alliteration. I like that.
Yeah. And I ordered a cheap microphone off of Amazon, downloaded Audacity onto the family computer. I got a recording app on my cell phone, and I sent out a few texts to this kind of comes back around to being in a band. I mean, I texted, Billy Gray, who's now in Fozzy, was in Primer with me for a little bit. So I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. Do you want to do it? He's like, hell yeah, I'll do your podcast. Fred Corey, early interview. Bobby Burns, easy early interview. Chris Cale from Five Finger Death Punch replaced me in 12 volt negative earth. So I've known him, God, 25 years now. So I text him. I'm like, hey, let's will you do my podcast?
Right.
So the first 10 episodes or so were just people that were already in my cell phone. So kind of came out the gate with some really good artists and stuff. And I cringe when I go back and listen to those early episodes. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I cringe now too. But yeah,
we can relate to all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am so over my voice. It's beyond me. I even edit it like 1.6 speed just so I don't have to hear myself.
I might start doing that for myself.
And I just jotted down. That's a pro tip right there.
Yeah, pro tip.
Well, it also gets through the episode quicker too. But
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was really just, I found a server, I found a host, and I did it so quick because I think if I would have really mapped it out and tried hard, I probably wouldn't have done it. And I think podcasting was still, I mean, I know it had been around at that point for 10 years, but I mean, it was still kind of in that infancy of people really getting into it and not just mainstream people with really good equipment. It was kind of opening up for everybody else. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what brought me into, I've always been naturally questioning everything and everyone around me. So, I mean, that's where that comes from. And then time, circumstance, everything else got me into it.
And you beat the boom too, which was nice. You were, you started it 5-6 years ago instead of last year when the whole world was stuck at home. It was like, we can start one too. I mean, we were just out in front of it, just barely. We started when the day the pandemic started. But yeah, 6 months later, it was like, who are all you and where do we all come from?
Well, the one nice thing about the pandemic really put a focus on video. And so I got more into video, and that kind of takes you right into the Knotfest stuff. Because by the time I had a friend that was doing a lot of video, so I was asking him, what do you got? What are you buying? Because I'm definitely that guy that if I see a video of a podcast being recorded, I'm like, what's that piece of equipment?
Yeah.
What's that piece of equipment? I've bought so much crap over the years that I've seen other people use. I'm like, their voice sounds really good. I'm going to get that. I mean, this microphone, this is a Joe Rogan special right here. But the pandemic start doing more video interviews. Everyone's at home. Everyone's doing Zoom. Everyone's doing, Skype and everything else. So I upped the internet. I bought this entire setup just for video interviews. And then I had, just getting onto the Knotfest thing, what I've joined up with, but right about the time the pandemic starts too, is Knotfest turns from just being the festival to let's become a media platform. And I was quickly onto it. I was like, wow, because Bees, who was on Knotfest for a long time, I was a big fan of his former show, That's Not Metal. And, I had been friendly with him for a long time. And so when they first started doing stuff, I was like, hey, let me develop a show for knotfest.com. He's like, hold off. They're trying to do some stuff. Hold off. And we'll do something down the line kind of stuff. And Ryan J. Downey, who's over there, has, been on the podcast before, and him and I have talked a lot because he did the Metallica podcast. And then back in like February of this year, they were like, we're really going to go hard at Twitch. They've really tried to do like an MTV style, even ESPN style, to where, from 4 to midnight Eastern, they've got content all day long. And so when they started that's when I got the call of, hey, do you want to do a show for the Knotfest Twitch? And I'm like, yeah.
Fuck yes.
And so, yeah, they're like, well, this is what we think you would be good at. This is what you should do. I was like, all right. And the crazy thing about the whole Knotfest deal is even though it's like a bigger platform, I thought they would have a little bit more input, but really I've like almost 100% free reign to do
nice
whatever I want between my, 5 to 7 Eastern on Thursday nights, Knotfest Twitch.
Go check that out.
And then after my first guest, which was Heidi from Butcher Babies, who had been on my podcast a couple of times, I emailed her and said, hey, I got this Knotfest Twitch thing going on. Would you like to be the first guest? She's like, absolutely. So I interview her, and I think the episode is just trash. Like, I'm just like, this is a bad idea. I'm going to get fired. Like they're going to be like, what were we thinking? And we'll just move on and we'll find another guy. And then right after I get off my stream and I look at my phone, and like my boss at Knotfest is like, dude, that was awesome. I'm like, all right. And he said some of the other people from Knotfest were watching. Everybody loved it. And because I had been trying to get Talk Toomey over to Knotfest also. And he was like, everybody loves it. So let's definitely talk about your podcast coming over. I'm like, okay.
Nice.
So, I mean, it kind of all came quickly, man. And yeah, I mean, I think they've helped me get one guest, and that was Sonny from POD, talking 20 years of satellite. Mm-hmm. Other than that, man, everything else that I've done on Knotfest has been, from relationships I already had, the publicists. I mean, obviously the publicists that I had relationships with, they know that I've got a larger audience now, or a larger name behind me and things like that. So they're a little bit more willing to give you those top of the line guests, to where before they would offer you, yeah, you can talk to that band, but only the bass player is available. You're like, all right, I got you. And then now it's like, we're going to hold out till you get the singer, that type stuff. So
we love the bass players though. We take them all.
Oh, I get it, man. If Jason was still with us, he'd be much better get than me.
How was it? Because Twitch is live. How is it pivoting from the podcast where you can stay up till, we know this from experience, 2 a.m. editing, where Twitch, it's live, you're running. There's no hiding. It's
pretty nerve wracking, honestly. It's the first time I did it, I was like beyond nervous. Because the first time I did it, I did more of I played some videos and tried to be, music critic about them and have a theme and everything else. Now it's a little bit looser. I'll have a couple of guests on. The chat room now is a little bit more regulars, so I know what's going on. I mean, we always joke because 5 to 7 Eastern is a lot of people's time they cook dinner. So we always joke about like, what's everybody cooking? Because for some reason I found out that a lot of people have it on their phone, like while they're cooking. And so everybody chimes in with, oh, we're making a pasta dish tonight and stuff like that. So it's definitely calmed down. I mean, I think this is about 4 months in, and it's becoming a little bit more second nature. I had done some live streams before that, so I wasn't totally out of my element. We were doing like a Talk Toomey live on Facebook for a little bit, just doing those every once in a while with friends and things like that. So I mean, it wasn't completely out of my wheelhouse, but it's definitely, when you've got the Knotfest name and you're like coming on and you're trying to like do the best show you can, and the whole time you're like, this sucks. But now I think it's a little bit more, second nature. The one thing I do like about it is because, I know you guys, when you do the intro to this, you'd be like, what's up guys? Welcome to Podios. What's up guys? Welcome to Podios. So, you'll start over, and if you stumble on your words, you'll stop and you'll do it again and things like that.
That doesn't happen.
No,
never.
I'm just saying that's what I do.
Oh, okay. You're right. That does happen.
You're a little bit more stream of conscience when you're live, but yeah, when you're recording your intro, especially me, because I'm solo. So I'm like, yeah, I got Gary Holt from Exodus and Slayer, and they got a great new album out. And when you go back in, you can edit it and stuff like that. But when you're live, you just know you have to just go. So I think that's the main thing is you're maybe not too picky in your head, and you just continue to talk without stopping.
That was exactly what I was going to say. It's just like, I know we have a safety net right now. I mean, we can stop this. I could take a 10-second pause right here. No one would know. No, I didn't, but I could. And at the same time, like going live like that, it must be an adrenaline rush on top of being a little nerve wracking. But then, you kind of settle into it and feel comfortable because you do it like anything else.
Oh yeah. Cause I mean, I've got the, the go live button on my end here, and it's a live show too. So, I mean, there's definitely, as you're bringing people in, they've got a bad connection or they've got this, they've got that. They, for the most part, I don't think anybody's ever like no showed yet. I did have Cold on the show the other day, and they were on the first night of their tour. It's actually one of the best posts I've ever done. I did a quick post right before I was about to go on, and I posted it in a Cold group. And the guy, I see a reaction and a comment, and I'm like, oh, cool, a comment. I open it up. It's like, guy goes, I'm standing in the meet and greet line right now, so make it quick.
Oh,
That's amazing.
So, and there was the first night of the cold tour, and so they didn't have a ton of time. I think we did like 10 minutes, like a quick hit, because they were, obviously sound checking, and they haven't played a show live in a while, and all of a sudden they have to stop and talk to me for 10 minutes.
Right.
So, I mean, it was a quick chat. It was a lot of fun, but yeah, it's been an experience, trying to get everybody together and everybody dealing with everyone's Wi-Fi and all of that nonsense too. So it's been a lot of fun though.
So you mentioned talking to Cole, they're out on tour now. That obviously changes the dynamic from what you've been doing for the last year and a half. Same as us. I mean, when we started, it was just us for a while, and then we were talking to people that were at home. Like we're not doing anything. We're not touring. We're not in the studio really per se, unless they're a solo artist maybe, because nobody really knew what to do. But now you've got people back on tour, and I think I listened to that. So you mentioned the van hum in the background.
Bus hum.
And it's there, yeah. The bus hum, it's there, and you're like, oh, well, it's like not the greatest sounding quality because of that, but at the same time, you're like, they're back on tour, like good.
Yeah,
we're getting live music again. So.
Yeah, I had I interviewed Frank Bello from Anthrax a while back for the show, and it was funny. The original email was like confirmed for another Thursday, and then the publicist wrote me back. She's like, I have forgotten all about this part of it, but they're on tour that day, so he can't do it. Yep. She's like, I have been so used to not even having to worry about looking at a tour itinerary that she booked him for a day that they were doing a festival.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we're starting to see that a little bit with people we're trying to wrangle. It's like, all right, can we do this down? No, they might be playing a show that night, or like getting ready to go on tour. Maybe they're rehearsing that night, so we can't do that. Yeah,
the one cool thing is I'm going to do. It's cool and it's not cool, I guess. The Louder Than Life is here Thursday, tomorrow. To let you guys know when we're recording. But this is the first year I'll go to it that there's no interviews done, because every year you go there, you set up in the back in the media area, the guys come through and you do quick little hits with everybody but they're not allowing interviews this year. So I get to go as a fan, which is kind of nice. But I'm only going to be able to go see the Thursday day because Knotfest is in Iowa on Saturday. And at first that we were going to go out there and we were going to do Twitch streaming with the guests and all the artists were going to come over, and it was going to be this big thing, and we were going to go up, and which my favorite part was going to be going up and introducing bands. I was going to be that schlub that comes out and like what's up, Iowa, let's give a big round of applause to Megadeth or something, like one of those things. But
awesome.
But with COVID, nobody backstage, nobody does anything. Rumor has it they're going to play my Jason Newsted interview between bands on the Jumbotron, which that's fine with me. Like,
hell yeah.
But
that's huge.
That is awesome. It's like my interview with Jason and Ryan's interview with Corey, I think was going to be kind of playing throughout the day. But so I had just thought I was going to just stay here in Louisville and go to Louder Than Life. And then Monday they're like, are you still coming to Iowa? And I'm like, I thought we weren't doing anything. But I think now what they said they're actually setting up a Twitch stream for throughout the day. So it should be pretty awesome. I don't know if we're going to be interviewing artists or not, but I'm going to hop in a car on Friday morning, drive out, hotel room, go to Knotfest, Iowa as a part of Knotfest, which should be awesome. Hopefully get to go up and introduce a band here and there. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun. 30,000 Slipknot fans in the middle of Iowa. should be awesome to get to go see, and kind of being somewhat affiliated with that camp is pretty cool too.
Definitely.
Kind of living vicariously through you, through all these multi bookings. I book myself solid on my calendar. Like I want to be here simultaneously. 2 different festivals. I'll do it. I'll pull it off somehow. But also, you might have alluded to this earlier. Like, it seems like you have a lot, but in terms of like your biggest, like, holy shit moment, you mentioned one of your influences earlier was Jason Newsted. I don't know if that's your biggest holy shit moment, but is that one of them? Is that it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was definitely it was crazy because I've built a relationship with Michael Alago, who signed Metallica to Elektra. I've had him on. He came on the Twitch stream. He came on the podcast. We're friends on Facebook, and he comments on my stuff sometimes, which is very bizarre. Like, I'm just like, this dude signed Metallica. Why is he, commenting on my stupid post about, French fries, whatever. But so I saw that Jason popped up on the Metal Hammer podcast, and I messaged Michael, and I'm like, hey, I see Jason's popping up on some podcasts. Can you help me out? And he's like, give me a second. And then, a few minutes go by, and he goes, send me a couple of interviews that you want me to show him. I'm like, Jesus. Okay. So I sent him to the Knotfest page. I had done an interview with the guitar player from Flotsam and Jetsam, obviously a big, and then Andreas Kisser from Sepultura, another big fan favorite of Jason. So I just said, send him to this. If he sees anything he likes, then we'll go from there. And this all happened on a Friday. And within a couple of hours, I get a message from Michael, and it's like, someone from Q Prime, which is Metallica's management, will be reaching out to Knotfest to set this up. And I'm like, well, shit. So I had to call my guy at Knotfest and be like, hey, someone from Q Prime supposed to be it was like my people, Jason's people were reaching out to my people to get this like together. And yeah, within a few hours, it was like, you will be interviewing Jason Monday at noon. So I called work, and I'm like, I got to take a vacation day.
Yep.
I'm not coming in for any reason that day. And and so I come down here, and I plop everything up, and I use the program I use, his face pops up on it, and I'm just like, fucking Jason Newsted, man. He gave me an hour, and it was awesome. It was, I had so many notes written down that we didn't even get to. And then at the end of it, he goes, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna be doing something soon. I'd like to come back on. I'm like,
all
okay.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yep. That's a yes.
Right.
Man.
And and then we chopped it up a little bit, put out about 4 15-minute clips on the Knotfest YouTube, and all together it's like 127,000 views.
Damn.
Wow.
It's nuts, man. It's got a life of its own. I mean, the comment section's a little bit of a mess, but
that happens.
I'm staying away from that. Somebody gave me crap about where I wear my hat. I was like, I think this is where people wear hats. Like,
right.
Like, I'm looking in the mirror, like, I think that's where it's supposed to be.
I'm gonna go ahead and say that's where you wear your hat. Who fucking cares? Like,
yeah,
exactly.
That's where it's comfortable for you, man.
Someone goes, yeah, the interviewer wears his hat really low, cuts off his eyebrows. I was like, what? That's just a hat, dude. Like, stop it.
The internet.
Yeah.
I love the internet. I hate it at the same time.
Right. But yeah, Jason definitely was the oh shit moment. I mean, before that, I got David Ellefson from Megadeth early on, another big influence on mine. That was like episode 42, 41, somewhere in there. So I mean, that was very early on that as soon as that was back when I was doing more phone stuff. So his name pops up on my phone, or his phone number popped up on the phone. I was like, oh my God, Dave Ellefson. But
This is real, right?
Yeah. So I mean, there's been definitely a few of those people over and the great Wes Borland interview I did, where we did right at 2 hours.
Wow.
And the only reason we stopped was because I had to go pick up my son from daycare, or we might still be on the phone. I think he honestly was just doing it to see how long he could go.
No.
Love it. I love it.
But I mean, that was a mess. That was the big. What was it where he called Aaron Lewis bougie or something like that?
That's amazing.
So yeah, that was a fun episode.
No, just hearing the Metallica story, one thing we found from doing this is just how connected the music industry is.
Yeah.
And you don't know when you're going to tap someone's name or, dial, fire up the Rolodex. And that scenario is a perfect example. And you having actually been on both sides of it, you probably know that better than anyone.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that how you connect the dots in all these, because Michael Alago came on to promote his book. He and I got along really well on with the interview. Obviously you just Facebook friend him, and he says yes, and he posts like every day too. He posts like these inspirational things and stuff, and yeah, you just kind of keep that up. And then, like I said, I brought him on the Twitch show, and yeah, I was like, I even told him in the text, like, I see that Jason's doing some interviews, and I'm shooting my shot, man. He's like, give me a second.
Yep.
Amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you got to. And listening to you talk about all that, I feel all of it for some of the stuff that's happened for us. And I mean, different level, we're not getting Jason Newsted per se, but just getting someone to say yes, especially when you're new and haven't done it a ton, and then be like, all right, that person is in, they've answered this, and then you end up, striking up an hour-long conversation with them, and you just, it blows you away that everybody's connected, we're all people. And it's wild to me, and the fact that we get to do this is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, back in the day when you were, hitting up Instagram or Facebook and trying to be like, hey, I've got this podcast and I've had this person on. I'd really love to have you on. Sending out so many of those. I mean, I tend to deal with a lot more publicists now. I mean, I do have a lot of friends still. I tend to deal with publicists because. And I'm sure you guys get it too, where you set up something through the person.
Yep.
And I think when you set up something through the person, sometimes they're a little bit more like cancel-y, or can we do it at this time and not that time? And, it's a little bit more flaky, but I know some people don't like the publicist side of it, but I like it because if it comes to a publicist, most of the time if it's going to be 9:00, it's 9:00. It's not 9:15, it's not 9. They're there when they say they're going to be there. So it's a little bit more of comforting for me.
Yep, totally.
So Josh, we've talked a lot. If folks want to check out your podcast, the Talk to Me podcast, and the Knotfest Twitch, how can they do that? And first of all, if you need instructions, you might need more help than this, but go for it.
Yeah. A website, you can go to talktoomeypod.com for the podcast. All the links are there. The Knotfest Twitch is twitch.tv/knotfestofficial. It's always free. You can always chat. I now post some of the Twitch interviews onto the Talk to Me feed. And then if you're listening to those shows, you can always tell that, the chat room is always a buzz. People jump in there with good questions. I'll ask them. People jump in there with dumb questions. I'll ask them too. I'm much more apt to ask the question of what's your favorite artist, or what is a band you'd like to tour with? Some of those kind of more generic questions. If I can say, hey, Tony in the chat's asking,
right.
Sometimes you can actually get a good answer out of some of those generic questions, but yeah, it's definitely, the fans asking questions. The fans actually ask a lot of bizarre questions that I'm like, someone in the chat's asking about, and then you'll say it and they're like, oh my God, that was, Salt Lake City. And, you'll get a crazy story out of it or something. But,
wow.
But yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun, definitely interactive. So come over, hang out with us. There's a lot of great shows over there on the Knotfest official Twitch. And then obviously, there's Knotfest Daily with Alicia Toot, where it's like a daily wrap up of new songs and movie trailers and things like that. And you got Ryan J. Downey doing stuff over there with the Screen Crusaders, I believe it's called. And you got riff war type shows where people are playing music and beer tasting and things like that. So there's a lot of good shows. Come check it out. Like I said, it's kind of like an old school MTV type thing where we play videos, we talk about them, commentate. If I'm in the mood, I'll start playing videos about, old head PE videos. And if you're a new metal fan, come check it out, because we're going to have a lot of new metal artists on. I'm definitely talking to CJ from Drowning Pool about coming on soon. So that'll be a lot of fun getting him on the show and getting to talk some of those early days with Dave Williams, things like that. So yeah. And it's a little bit more of like the podcast. I've tried to differentiate. The podcast is more, hey, we have a new album out, let's talk about the new album. The Twitch stream should be more, hey, let's talk about your career. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the differentiation there of the podcast and the Twitch stream.
And you're on every Thursday, you said?
Yeah, Thursdays 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern, Knotfest official Twitch. And then the podcast also comes out on Thursdays, wherever you get your podcasts. And then the replay of the Twitch stream comes out on Tuesdays now. So Tuesdays, man, this is a lot. It's always adding something.
You're busy, man. You're busy.
Yeah. So yeah, the Twitch stream replays are the following Tuesday. Podcasts are Thursdays. Throwback Throwdown with Toomey on Knotfest official Twitch is Thursday nights, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern.
Nice. Cool. we have a couple of lightning round questions. They're not super in depth. They just don't always fit into the flow of an interview. So,
right.
First one, something we talk about a lot here is nerdery. Something we call nerdery. It can be a physical object. It can be, just talking about what we do every week when we record. We call it nerdery. It's the stuff that we love about music. It could be any different thing. So for me, like my shoulder, as you can see, there's a couple of photos framed. Those came from Lance Mercer himself. He took them of Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. So that's nerdery. If you had to pick, you've got a bunch behind you, I can see. What's one of your favorite pieces of nerdery that you own?
Ooh, off camera, there's like boxes and boxes of crap.
Same.
This is like the one spot in the house where like the wife just shakes her head. She's just like, she's a clean freak. Like earlier, she's like, I'm about to clean. And I look around, I'm like, what are you going to clean? Like the house is clean. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, so like this is just my area. And she's just like, I can't handle it. Favorite piece of nerdery. I'm trying to see what we got back here. I've got I found some DeLorean stuff the other day at the Goodwill. So I've got a bunch of Back to the Future stuff hanging around. That's definitely a nerd moment for me. The framed white photo here with the autographs, that is my Pantera autographs from 1994. I was 15 years old. My friends and I, we found where they were staying, the hotel they were staying in, and we like staked it out. And then this is back when like the Pantera home videos were a big deal, and we knew like the crew of the band, because the Pantera home videos, the crew was as big as the band in those videos. And so we saw like the head of security, Big Val, and we're like, Big Val. And it was only me and him. Like, it wasn't like a huge crowd of people. And he was like, guys, if you guys are cool, the band will be cool and blah, blah, blah. And so they'll be down in a little while. And I went to the bathroom at this hotel, and I come outside, and at checking out, you could see Dimebag's pink beard.
Wow.
Checking out. And me and my friend were like, oh my God, it's Dimebag Darrell, And we, run up to him, and I've got this really bad photo of me. And like last second, I was like, I'm going to make a metal face. And like when you're 15 years old, you don't have a metal face, so I'm making a stupid face. But yeah, I got the, all of Pantera's autograph in 1994, Far Beyond Driven tour. Pretty awesome.
Nice.
Damn.
You said DeLorean. I check your Instagram DM. I just sent you a photo of a DeLorean that I saw this summer at a restaurant in Kennebunk, Maine.
I was getting I got in a car accident, and my a lady I work with's husband, has a body shop or whatever. So she's like, take it there, he'll fix it up for you. So I take it there, and he's got, inside the shop, he's more of a it's not like a mechanic, he's a body guy. And so I look around, and he's got, Stingray and whatever. And then all of a sudden I see it. It's a damn DeLorean in his thing. Nice. And I'm like, what? And so I go over to it, and I'm like taking photos with it, and like selfies and all this other stuff with it. But yeah, there's been a few DeLorean moments over the years. When a 12-volt played New Orleans one time, we were getting off stage, and my singer went outside. He comes running back in. He's like, Toomey, there's a DeLorean outside. And I'm like, I go outside, and this girl who's, our age, late teens, early 20s, gets out of it. And I'm like, what are you doing with the DeLorean? She's like, my dad worked for John DeLorean back in the day, and this was an actual gift from John DeLorean. And I was like, you got to let me drive it. She's like, yeah, you can drive it.
Oh, nice.
So we get out, and I go onto the road, and I'm like driving like 10 miles an hour. And she's like, you can drive faster than this, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like
88 miles an hour.
I'm like freaking out. I was like, I don't want to break your DeLorean. I don't think she really cared about it. I think she just drove it. But yeah, that was awesome, man. I remember, and there was one for sale late 90s by our house, and they wanted $4,000 for it. Oh, I was like 19. I was like, who had $4,000 in your night?
Right.
I needed a car, but I couldn't buy a DeLorean for my daily driver. But man, I wanted that thing so bad.
And they only made there weren't many made. So yeah. 4,000 back then is way more now if it's in
I think they wanted 4,000. This was like internet the internet in its infancy. So
Yeah.
Now you can find DeLorean parts, and DeLorean Motor Company makes parts now and stuff. But back then they're like, it needs a water pump. Good luck finding one.
Yeah. You're never going to drive this. You can tow it to your house and look at it if you'd like.
Yeah, the internet plays a good part. That's like selling a vinyl record in the 90s and they're like, shit, I sold it for $20. Now it's worth 20 grand. Like, fuck.
Yeah.
Well, I sold this is funny. I sold a copy of Slipknot's Iowa on vinyl for like $15, like 8 years ago or something. Someone the other day was like, yeah, they didn't really they didn't repress that, and those things are going for like $300 now.
Yep.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Crazy.
Good job. Yeah, this is the one thing about the internet that kind of ruined a lot of the. I got really big into collecting metal lunchboxes there for a long time, and I really enjoyed going out and finding them at antique stores and thrift stores and yard sales and everything else. But then as soon as like eBay and everything became prevalent, where there's an app on your phone, it's like now it's kind of like lessened the hunt.
Totally.
Like if you really wanted a certain one, now you can just like boop, it's on your phone. But back in the day, you had to go and scour, Salvation Armies and stuff and find them.
Right. Pound the pavement a little bit. Yep.
Josh, you were mentioning the Pantera hotel thing. I can relate with a lot of the things you're saying. That one for sure, staking out the hotels. In fact, when you said the supermarket thing, like looking at Hip Parader and Circus Magazine, I would buy those to go to the hotel and get them signed, kind of thing. But kind of like
Nate's a creep, basically, is what he's saying.
Yeah, well, it was. I still am.
He's our creep, but yeah.
I got, like you said, the bins of random nerdery and stuff. I got that too. But kind of like switch it the other way around. Like Pantera, you were staking them out. For you on tour, do you have like a favorite memory or unique memory? I don't know, maybe being stalked was one of them, but something like that kind of sticks out for you in the Primer days? Yeah.
I mean, really just from the moment I joined Primer, like they were the fans of Primer were always very open to me being in the bands. I mean, they were very cool. It's funny now, once again, the internet being a little bit more prevalent, Facebook, people finding me that met me back then, sending me photos of me signing autographs and, hey, we took a picture with you back in the day. Those always kind of blow my mind. I look like a baby in those photos too. I'm like, look at that little kid. But yeah, I mean, just all that stuff. I mean, we took some photos for Metal Edge, and I met the editor of Metal Edge on that tour. And like I said, being a kid that just sat in Kroger and read Metal Edge magazine from front to back, and just seeing his name over and over. When I met him in person, it was like meeting a fictional character or something in real life.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's like that. Those kind of moments were always cool. The fan stuff was always cool. Signing autographs always was very cool. Even in 12 Volt, man, we got big enough in Nashville where here you go. Here's a good story. I thought about this the other day. I worked at Tower Records in Nashville for like a summer. And this is like 12 Volt Negative Earth is like we're the biggest metal band in town. We're selling out the 1,000-seat, club. And this kid comes up to me, and I'm working in this will date it too. I'm working in the cassette department and working by myself. And this kid kind of freaks out on me. He's like, are you 12 Volt Negative Earth? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, man, can I get your autograph? And I'm like, I'm at work. Like, why do you want my autograph? Like I was so dumbfounded, like why this kid wanted my autograph while I'm at work. And I honestly, I don't know if I gave it to him. That kid probably still hates me to this day. Like, that asshole didn't sign my shit. Probably some of those negative comments on YouTube is probably him.
That's great. That's awesome. Josh, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate talking to you tonight, and go check him out on the Twitch stream Thursday nights, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern.
That's it.
And the Talk Toomey podcast as well, which drops on Thursday as well, right?
Yeah. Thursday is a big, Talk Toomey Thursday, all the alliteration there.
Nice. Perfect. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it, Josh.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.